I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand it over to Design B&B, which are big friends of the club. And we've done several things with them and we're just big fans. And it is an honor today to be able to see such an awesome project and hear all about it. So thank you, Design B&B, for talking with us this evening. And there will be a Q&A session at the end. So throughout, if you have any questions, save them for the end, or you're welcome to drop them in the chats throughout, and we'll read them towards the end. So that's all for me.
Great. Thank you, Christian. We appreciate it. And thank you to the Chicago Graphic Design Club for having us tonight. Thank you to all of you for spending your evening with us as we pull back the curtain on what has truly been an extraordinary design journey for Design B&B over the past year and a half. We are Design B&B. We're an independent branding and design studio located in the West Loop of Chicago. So we have a deep love for Chicago, as you'll hear more about tonight. I'm Valerie. I'm principal and owner of Design B&B. And for me personally, helping the Auditorium Theater express their mission and how it's relevant to Chicago and to the world today is easy top 3 projects in my career. And that is saying a lot because I have been a designer for a minute.
All right, and hi everyone, I'm Parker Sheley. I'm a creative director. And for me, this project has really been a dream because we got to really be inspired by a physical space and a huge physical space at that. At Design B&B, we do a lot of really awesome package design work, work that you can hold in your hand. But this work for the auditorium just took design to a whole new scale.
And I'm Zach, senior designer here. As a huge patron of the arts and musician myself, I obviously love the Auditorium Theater and all the shows that I've been to there. And as we dove deeper into it, I saw that there was quite a bit of social good that was built into the theater as it was built, and that it continues to do today. So it was sort of a marriage of 2 beautiful worlds for me.
And I always put Zach on the spot, but he's also shy about saying that he has performed on the stage at the auditorium too.
Twice.
Okay, well, we want you to sit back, relax. Tonight, we are going to share our story in 3 acts. Act 1 is all about finding the big idea. Parker is going to show you how things developed right from the beginning, very behind the scenes, in the mess of it, how we were chasing big ideas. And you're also going to have a lot of tactics coming out of that, things that you can use in your work, and some really fun, cool facts about the auditorium itself. Act 2 is all about building the system, and Zach is going to nerd out with you guys on all of our design system. And you guys will discover the meaning behind all of our assets that we created and all of the design choices that we made. And finally, Act 3 is showtime. We'll talk about how we launched this sucker into the city and why a burning hot deadline can be your best friend in a project like this. But before Parker opens the curtain on Act 1, we wanted to share some pre-show jitters with you because there were a lot of them. Candidly, we almost passed on this opportunity with the auditorium. We had already identified and committed a full year of services to a pro bono client at the time that this brief landed on our desks. Our founder of Design B&B was retiring, and I was working on taking over the business, and it was a big transition year for us. And just like any new relationship, but especially a pro bono relationship, it's a gamble. And so those 3 things we're working our way into a lot of jitters, but we're here to say tonight and to encourage everybody that's listening, be brave. Be brave when that special brief comes along, and this one was really special. And there were 3 reasons why we couldn't pass it up. 1, it was a rare brief. The Auditorium Theater had so intentionally put it together, and there was very clear on what the problem was, what they wanted to do, who they were, and what their bold ambition was. Secondly, the brief was very clear. The social good that Zach was talking about is expressed in their mission, which is the theater for the people. And their goal was to really amplify that mission. They needed to bridge what is a storied past, so they're a very historic organization and building. But they needed to tell Chicago that they had a limitless future. So past to present, huge part of the brief. And then finally, they wanted to become a destination in and of themselves. So not just what show are we going to see, but let's go to the auditorium tonight. So very clear brief. And secondly, very aligned values. Design B&B and the Auditorium Theater had a beautiful intersection of values. At Design B&B, one of our core of our 5 values is to make design accessible. And the theater was very clear that at the heart of their rebranding initiative lied a profound commitment to upholding the Auditorium Theater's cherished legacy as the theater for the people. And really for the theater, that means offering world-class programming in arts and culture to all people of Chicago. And they have a lot of amazing programs that support that. So that aligned value is a ringer. And then lastly, this was an opportunity for Design B&B to make a mark on Chicago, on something that is just embedded in its history. And my team was ready to be pushed and to do the best creative that we've ever done. And this was the opportunity to do it. A lot of the times pro bono work can represent a moment of courage for your work. And we were ready to embrace that and ready to make that mark. So for all those reasons, we said yes to the brief. And that leads us to Act 1.
All right, so Act 1, this was really about finding our big idea. I remember when we decided to do this, and Val and I kind of looked at each other like, let's do it. And so the first thing was, yeah, let's learn about the theater and let's find that big idea. So the first step for us here is really just a lesson in doing your homework. You have to really live and breathe the brand or the category, the space that you're working in. So we needed to get to the theater and we need to experience it. That was step 1. Step 2 was we then also needed to understand the context that we were playing in as a theater, as a entertainment venue, look a little bit more broadly to understand that context. And then step 3 was we just needed to be the experts that we know that we are. We learned really quickly working with the auditorium that we were working with some really smart, brilliant people. I think every time that we shared work with them or engaged with them, we were just constantly learning about their history, about the story, about their programming, their audiences. They were always making us smarter. And there were so many times where we would go to present and I would be nervous and Val would always remind me, like, you are the expert in branding and in design in this room. So you just have to own that. And that's the role that you have to play in this room. And so I think that was just a big lesson for us of this was this is what we were experts at. And we were really able to show up in that way. So step 1 was, living it and breathing it. We went to the theater. The auditorium has been so generous with giving us tickets to different shows and different programs, to really welcoming us and our full team into their space. The theater is on the National Registry of Historic Landmarks, and so they do have a backstage tour that you can go and take. It's really fantastic. We got to tour the space with a really fantastic tour guide, so highly recommend going and just exploring that from a Chicago perspective. And being in that space that day, it really felt like we were in a playground. Like we got to really explore and immediately allow the space to start to inspire us and generate ideas right from day 1. And in that very first visit, we did some brainstorming actually in the physical space, which was really cool.
We also talk to people. So a big part of our process is what we would call an informational interview, but it's really about one-to-one conversations with a big cross-section of diverse perspectives. So everyone from talent recruiters to people who work the ticket windows, front of house, back of house, all the way to Rich, the CEO, who's been phenomenal. And we uncover the strengths and the opportunities in that. And I think a couple things we really took through the whole project with us were, we uncovered the tension between the past and the present. So there was such a strong desire to hold on to that architectural history that people were forgetting that this is an entertainment space. So some people needed to push that, other people just wanted to really hang on to that history and heritage. We understood more deeply the technical phenomenon that the auditorium is. The acoustics through the architecture are amazing. And that was called out very specifically. And then also, we're like a speakeasy, but we're hard to find, tough to beat. Nobody knows about it. I hope that lots of you on the call have been to the theater, but there's not a big marquee. It's a very unassuming exterior. People don't know it's there. It's a gem of the city. And so what this process of talking to people and really more deeply understanding the struggles of the staff and the perceptions of the city, it was to truly understand that our job in this was not to make the auditorium more interesting. Our job was to reintroduce the auditorium to the city and to the world. And understanding that nuance really came from this process. And when we could re-articulate that back to the theater, it gave us a ton of credibility as we moved the work forward.
Yeah, and as Val said, it's kind of an unassuming exterior, right? You might not know it's there, and because it's a National Historic Landmark, there are certain obstacles and barriers that they face as a building to drawing attention, like putting a big marquee on it, like the Chicago Theater, for example. And so that was part of it too. Part of our homework was just doing our research, learning about their sort of competitors, the other theaters in Chicago, out of Chicago as well. We looked at those organizations, we looked at their brand identities, how they show up, tried to understand, who loves these other types of venues and why is that? And so doing that research is really important part to the design process. I'm sure lots of you know that. But I think finding a way to frame that research and those takeaways can really unlock like a unique need or an interesting balance or tension within the challenge that you're then going to go design for. So when we looked at other theaters, something that we really observed that was really interesting to us was that this tension or this spectrum between what we called understudy to prima donna. So understudy were these venues, entertainment spaces that really, were taking a back seat to whatever it was that they were presenting. So for example, Broadway in Chicago, the identity of that organization really recedes to allow the shows that they're presenting to take center stage. And that experience can feel like really transactional. It can feel all about the ticket sale, the brand expression recedes. And then on the other end of that spectrum, you have what we call prima donna brands. So these were, immersive, really evocative brand identities that were just like really creating a cool vibe through a really disciplined brand identity and expression. So we kind of discovered this unique like challenge inside this challenge, right? The final brand identity was going to need to do both of these things at different times. Sometimes it was going to need to show up really proudly and disruptively, and other times it was just going to need to share the stage with whatever act was happening on the auditorium stage. And then lastly, again, being the experts in brand and design, we always like to look outside of the immediate category into adjacent spaces, things that our client might not be aware of. And so we looked at, broader culture and arts organizations, things like museums. We looked at design systems that really, some that told a story of the physical space or the building that this like museum or venue was in. How are they honoring their architecture? We looked at design systems that had really successfully been inspired by history and by legacy, but found a way to make that contemporary or modern for today. We looked at systems that were, doing a really good job at communicating a really broad range of programming. So stuff that wasn't necessarily in our clients like immediate like sphere, but that could inspire and help them see, what could be possible. And so in all of that research, like in immersing in the theater and, understanding the context we're playing in, and as we started to brainstorm ideas, we just kept coming back to their mission, the theater for the people. And we were interrogating that a little bit. We were just asking questions like, what does that actually mean? Like, who are the people? And I think, that mission for the theater, when it opened in 1889, 135 years ago, it meant things like the box seats were actually on the sides of the theater. They were prioritizing the affordable seat that the common Chicagoan could come and sit in. Tickets were affordable. They had like spaces that you can hang out and mingle before the show. So that mission really meant something to the organization when it launched and drove a lot of behaviors. But as we look to bridge the history and the future, we needed to understand, okay, what does that mission now mean in 2025 or 2024? So we really wanted to sharpen, like, who are we for? And to do that, sometimes it can be helpful to also define what you're against. So sometimes a big idea is strengthened by, knowing what you are and also knowing what you're not. And so this is just a little construct that we use to get to some big ideas. It's one that we use for other work at Design B&B, and it's just this construct called tribe versus enemy. And it's super like easy to replicate. For us, it just started as a really simple worksheet that we took with us to the theater. You can feel free to screenshot this and reuse this in your own design practice. But really, it's just really simply outlining, okay, a column for what's your point of inspiration? And then how does that inform a big idea, and a little spot for like a quick, messy, early sketch. And then at the bottom, like, how is that big idea then made stronger when you define who you're for and what you're against? And we'll take you through some examples of this, so this will make a little bit more sense. But here you can just kind of see, these are from that very first visit to the auditorium when we toured the space and we brought our whole team with us. We brainstormed some of this just on paper in the physical space. It was so cool to be, to really explore and experience it, and then immediately start to brainstorm ideas for the design identity. And some of these were really good. Some of these ideas weren't so good. And actually, the big idea that really carried all the way through to today was made in this room in that initial day one, and that's got the arrows pointing to it here. So just keep track of that, and you'll kind of see that come through the work. So all of that research and that immersion and knowing we're the experts in brand and design really was leading us to a round one presentation. So we want to now show you just kind of at a high level here, the 4 design concepts that we shared with the auditorium in our first round. Okay, so we call these brand worlds, and this first one here was kind of the setup for the tribe and the enemy. So in this space, the tribe was this the escape artists, and the enemy was the present. And we were really interested here in just countering, I think, this social pressure that I think we all feel today of like needing to be in the moment, this pressure to be fully present and fully locked in and not sort of daydreaming off. And so we were playing with this idea of actually, what if our enemy is the present moment? And what if the theater could take you somewhere else? So this space was called Somewhere Else. And it was really all about traveling to other moments, times, cultures, the theater as a portal, literally, to other places and other stories. And this really also used this geometric shape language that was nodding to the architecture and honoring all of the like gorgeous ornamentation and embellishment throughout the theater, all of that genius design and architecture, as a way to like transport you and transform you into somewhere else. Brand World B, and you'll see as we flip through these, like they all had very different color palettes and expressions. Like we were really in explore mode and pushing into different territories to excite and inspire the client. So this tribe was the Wanderers, and the enemy here was the fear of the unknown. And that led us to a big idea called hidden treasures. And this was really born from that discovery in the theater, really promoting curiosity, that you could go to the auditorium and tour it and experience and find new things and little hidden treasures inside this, amazing historic landmark. It was celebrating what we were calling the oddities inside the theater, and honoring the name, the auditorium. So kind of our own take on oddities. So things like this staircase that leads to nowhere, or this error in the marble install, this poor guy who installed the marble facing the wrong way, and it's stuck there for 135 years later. So just little things that are like, our tour guide told us about. You could go there and you could kind of tour them for yourself, was really at the crux of this hidden treasures idea. And then next was Brand World C, and this was really all this was about the honoring the variety of programming that the theater offers, the diversity of the programming. So here the tribe was the mixtapers, and the enemy was curation. So we loved that for such a historic building, using a metaphor like mixtaping to really talk about their variety and diversity of programming. And so this idea was called Astoundingly Askew. And we were juxtaposing the amazingness, the ingenuity, the scale of the architecture, of its acoustics, just the like amazingness that you feel when you walk in there, with this other kind of experience that you get by being in the auditorium, which is that everything is a little skewed, everything's a little off kilter, and that is really because since the theater has been erected, it has actually, the edges of it have actually sunken about 4 degrees because Chicago exists on a marsh. And so it's okay, the building is totally structurally sound now. I think most of the sinking happened within like the first 15 years of the building's existence, but it has led to this kind of like quirky, askew feeling that once you notice it, you really notice it. And we thought that was really interesting. We thought that made the theater really unique. And so this was playing with that juxtaposition of how amazing this place is, and also there's a little bit of quirk to it. And then lastly is Brand World D. And this one, we'll dive into a little bit more because this really was kind of the original big idea here. So the tribe for this space we called the Curious Congregators. So this is for those who follow the call from somewhere beyond this moment, where stories, melodies, and movements, and maybe a good drink, bring us together, enthralled and captivated. So this was all about people. This was really about being for people who like to come together. And so the enemy, the reverse of that, was the Netflix binge, the convenient couch-bound binge, the complacency to stay in and scroll, where the only connection that exists is the cord plugged into your phone. And I think we can all relate to that next episode button where it's just like, I've been watching like 5 episodes of Real Housewives and I haven't connected to anyone. And so we love that there was like a real cultural relevance to today. I think especially, coming out of like in a post-COVID world, craving connection and live entertainment. And so, we're all about getting people into the theater. So our enemy in this space was the Netflix binge, staying home and staying on your couch. So that led us to this belief and this idea of world-class meets community. And again, that balance between impressive world-class performance and really approachable, welcoming community. So this idea was called B's Place. And B came from this key figure in the auditorium's history, Beatrice Spachner, who really was a champion for the theater in the 1950s and 1960s. And she really saved and advocated for the theater and saved it from becoming a parking lot. There were plans to demolish the building, and she really advocated for the preservation of the auditorium theater. And so that little bit of history sparked this idea of B's Place. And so you'll see here, this space was all about, her name was Bee, and that immediately took us to this metaphor of a beehive. Just like the auditorium, a beehive is maybe unassuming on the exterior, but when you get inside, you feel like you're just like dripping in honey. So this color palette was golden and vibrant and glowing. And that's really what it feels like to go into the theater. If you don't know it's there and then you get inside, you're just amazed. It's so, so cool. And that color impression, we felt like was really a distinct element and feature of the theater. And that metaphor of a beehive and coming to the hive carried through too. So these little arrows that are sort of like being pulled in, there's this magnetic force. Photography was, spotlighting the different people that work there, the community that makes it all happen, the bartenders, the people that work at the box office. And so it was really like creating this space, this like a third place, to the third space out of the theater. Just another page here, how we started to, show this concept to the client a little bit more here. You start to see those arrows come in, honoring the color palette. It was just really like an immediate visual metaphor that inspired tons and tons of ideas. So that was Act 1. That got us through a really big first round of work. And so then moves into Act 2, which was really now, okay, let's build out the design system.
We did hear some really great feedback. And like Parker said, we always felt smarter when we left a meeting with the auditorium. Like we had learned something more about their world and the way that they reacted and responded to the work. So that in and of itself was fun. From that first presentation that Parker shared, there were two spaces that really stuck out, which was B's Place and Somewhere Else. What the auditorium loved about Somewhere Else was its sophistication, the fact that it represented a world-class impression. There was a lot of geometric homage paid to the architecture and design, which also really clicked with the auditorium. And then B's Place, they loved it for its sense of community, for that first-person photography, the glowing palette. And it really did feel like something different in the market as well. What they were looking for was a little bit more auditorium history being presented with that world-class entertainment. They do have the most diverse programming in the city, that's a fact. And they also have an incredibly historied, celebrity star-studded history of people who have performed there. So it was key that started to come forward more. They also wanted to incorporate the genius of the auditorium's architecture a little bit more. Adler and Sullivan are American icons in architecture, and they can boast that. So we should pull that forward even more. And they wanted to balance the sophistication with the approachability. This is all really great feedback, looks smart on a piece of paper, but this is where what we would call one of the moments where the slippery slope comes in. And Design B&B was very much in a B's place. We thought it stood out we thought it was like very differentiated, had a very modern feel, but still had the history incorporated in really smart ways. We heard the feedback that it needed to be more world-class. And so we kind of took that feedback, heard it, and incorporated it into the next round, and then gave some hard truths around the fact that we felt like Somewhere Else was too much of the category. Like if we're really honest with ourselves and we look at that beautiful brand world that Parker showed, it kind of felt like it could be a lot of different theaters. And we wanted to make something that felt much more unique for the auditorium. So this was a place where we stuck in a little bit and we said, we understand the feedback. And we like dedicated ourselves to going back and making sure that feedback happened, but we didn't do it by Frankensteining the two together. We did it by going all in on Bee's Place and really incorporating all that feedback and expanding the system to be in it. It can take a little bit of guts, but when you're in specifically a pro bono relationship, this is a place where, as Parker said, we do get to be the experts a little bit. We get to encourage our clients to be bold. And the theater had provided us with a sponsor from the board of directors who has a creative background, Marlena, and she was fantastic. And she supported us every step of the way in this recommendation for Bee's Place as well. And so in a very partnership way, we moved forward without smashing ideas together.
Yeah, I think as like Zach and I can probably say, as designers and creatives, it was really awesome to have that permission from our creative leader too, of like, go all in, like let's really go into this one space. And that was just a really cool part of the experience.
Yeah, Frankenstein is a great book, but terrible feedback. So we brought everything together in a way that felt still true to our original Bee's Place sense of warmth and home and this sort of third space energy, a place you want to hang out and spend some time, but trying to get the needle to move, or at least be able to move to a place of this world-class level performance that they put on weekly, daily even. They have spanned tons of genres over their entire history. They do a lot of dance now, but we wanted to make sure that this brand world could move across any type of performance, from speakers to Broadway, which they've done a few times. So there was a lot of levers that we were trying to pull and balance and make sure that they could still interact. So as we moved across, we thought, okay, can this flex to show all of the variety of shows that they have? So you can pick out Beetlejuice. Tom Hanks is there in the corner. You get Tank and the Bangas. They've had, even just on this page alone, which does not even scratch the surface. There's a ton of variety in the types of shows, the type of performances that they put on the stage there. So we needed to make sure it did that. We also wanted to make sure, even from things like the space like Oddities, where there's beautiful little detail all over the place, we wanted to make sure that we could bring some of that stuff in too. And because Adler and Sullivan built the theater to be so prairie centric, an homage to what Chicago used to look like before they were buildings, and indeed the surrounding territory, there's a ton of filigree, both hand painted all over the wallpaper, to the sort of wrought iron railings and things like that. So we wanted to build both a shape language around it and a bespoke illustration set for them too, that could really elevate and also be super ownable for them. As we saw, a lot of things in this category are very samey. They all kind of look the same. They all have a nice, like, either script logo or some sort of music symbol in the name, or it's some sort of reference to the bill. Like they're all kind of the same. So we wanted to do things that felt interesting and that felt ownable specifically to them. So when we brought it all together, it started to really feel like we could tick all those boxes at once. And at this point, they started to love it, which is really saying something, because we only brought one route, and which is the thing that is uniquely possible with a pro bono client like this, especially when it's terrifying, but it is special with this partnership because they loved us and we loved them, and we kind of knew we could get away with it, but we were also so excited about it that they couldn't really say no. They couldn't really say no, and because we bring everything to the table in such a strategic and robust and thorough way, they really were sold on it by the time we were done. So at that point, it was time to move into our creative principles. We've seen a bunch of people do these, but we tend to do them in our own unique way and at our own unique time. So it's at this point that we want to say, okay, let's take a step back and start to describe what we're doing, start to codify what we're doing, so that we keep the spirit of this and the soul of this the same as we start to version it out and make new stuff. So we arrived on 3 different creative principles. Our first is epic intimacy, which we really liked and is really unique to the theater because there is a closeness to it, despite being a huge room. There is a closeness that is achieved by top of the line acoustics. When it was built, there weren't speakers. There wouldn't be speakers for 40, 50 years. So it had to amplify a spoken voice to 4,000 people. There's also just a warmth that the space feels that keeps people coming back to it. Once a performer has performed there, we've heard time and time again that they're like, we want to go back to the auditorium. That place rules. And then there's a ton of little detail. As grand as the room is, you can go in there 50 times and still see a new thing every time. And we started to prove out that creative principle with some before and afters. We love doing this. It helps the client really start to see and adjudicate the work as we go through. Not only does it help us build out the world, but it helps them start to understand the work that we're doing and give them guidelines, both for feedback and for understanding the world that they're going to build once we're done with it. We found that especially clients that don't typically speak design or don't know how to speak creativity or give feedback, these creative principles really help them look at the work we do in the future and go, oh, okay, I see how epic intimacy is coming into that. And we really describe that through our photography. So you can see it's not just beautiful people on a stage from a distance, but it is folks up close. It's people playing around in the theater, folks walking on seats, folks getting ready backstage, right? That shot on the lower right there from backstage of the performer just after he's finished. We thought is really unique. I mean, you see people singing and dancing and doing these things all the time in photography, but it's very rare that you get the emotional connection with someone having just finished, especially from that point of view.
Yeah. And it was cool too to see once they started to fall in love with this, we watched them kind of in real time go, well, if we have these conversations early enough with some of the acts and talent, we can get them for 15 minutes before, and we can get some photography of them in the seats or just before they go on stage from the dressing room. So not only were we bringing like a new brand identity and design assets, but we were like helping them change and drive new behaviors, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, there were a number of times on the way back from presenting to them that we were like, oh, they're getting it, because they've moved beyond just oh, how are we going to achieve that to we should achieve that,
and giving us new ideas too, which is really cool.
So creative principle number 2, magnetic attraction. So they excellent question, Cheryl. We're going to get to photography. It's going to be robust and beautiful, don't worry. Magnetic attraction, we talked about the metaphor of the beehive and how it is just a place for things to gather. And we really wanted to achieve that because, as I said, once you've been there, you want to go back time and time and time again. And we thought we could achieve that with our color palette. We have these arrows that we've pulled from our logo mark that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then even just things like repeated conversational sort of colloquial tone of voice saying, just get in here. That feels friendly and it feels inviting and it feels great. So we've tried to encapsulate that in our color palette by doing a couple of things. We know it was a gathering place. I mean, this was the 1880s, so there was a cigar room and there was a salon for the women to sit and warm themselves and warm their dresses after coming in off the cold streets. But then we knew that it's still this elevated, wonderful theater, and we wanted to encapsulate that in our colors. And the thing that we like to do is name them, both in such a way that it lets our clients talk about the colors in a way that's quick and easy, instead of just saying lame things like the yellow. They can say spotlight yellow, and it has this really specific meaning, both in how to use it and where it goes. So in things like crew black and understudy white, we know we wanted to lean into our yellow palette, our golds and our yellows. But when that can't be there, we know that we wanted to use things like white and black to really work hard for us, which is why they're named things after hardworking, performers and folks in the theater. The gilded gold texture is style. We went through probably 10 or 15 different gold textures before we landed on one that we really liked, especially because we've been to the theater a few times. We've gone in and really seen have the gold leaf and the textures and things that were in there. We wanted it to be really representative of the space. And then our third principle, astounding ingenuity. As we said in a couple of different times during the presentation, there's a lot of cool shit about this building. There were, it's the first building to ever have indoor air conditioning, which was achieved by like rolling giant blocks of ice into the basement and connecting the whole space to these giant air ducts, which you can still see when you go in there. It is the largest theater in Chicago in terms of seating. It held 4,200 when it was built. Now, after the remodeling, for slightly roomier and slightly more comfortable seating, it holds about 3,900. But it is still the largest theater in Chicago in terms of seating. Take that, Chicago Theater. And it has, as we've said before, some of the best acoustics in the country. We had the Mr. Shuba, the man who is responsible for Shuba's Tavern in Lincoln Hall, a man that knows his acoustic spaces, say that it's one of the best halls in the country. So we know that we wanted our brand to reflect how incredible it was too. So we did that with the details, almost counterintuitively. We said, there's a lot of really cool stuff about this place, and we want to make sure that we bring all that to life. That Adler and Sullivan clout that they have, we wanted to bring it to the front with all of the motifs that they bring through the building. You can see through all of these images, these look like completely different places, but they are all in fact the same building. They really went to town on this place in terms of detail and sculpting and bringing in that sort of prairie energy. So we know that we wanted to bake that into our system as a whole.
Yeah, and it's cool too because now it really functions like a tour of the space. Like it's like the tour guide took us to the space on that first day, and every time we go there, we're like, there's the shape there, and there it's there. Like we're still discovering it ourselves, which is so fun.
We thought we knew where all these shapes were,
Yeah.
and every time we go, we keep finding new ones. So that's all great in theory, and we knew that we had a really strong blueprint for things moving forward. But we had to prove it actually works. There are lots of specific things that theaters need to do and spaces that they need to be in. And as you saw at the beginning, a lot of times they play second fiddle to whatever shows on the stage, or they need to communicate specific things to specific people very quickly. So we needed to flush this out and make sure that it could tick all those boxes for them before they were sold on it. So we tried a few things. We know that posters are our best friend. Designers, if it's not a tote bag, it's a poster that make it for everything. So we wanted to make sure that this logo that we've started to build, this arch that we pulled from the architecture from the space, could start to work really hard for us. The photography that we don't have control over a lot can still be ownable to the auditorium just by using that logo in it. That in entrenching that A with the Supremes there, or incorporating Freddie Mercury into that arch from when Queen performed there in '76. We know that it can really make photography ownable, whether or not we have control over it. Remember those posters, by the way, we're going to come back to them. We also needed to know that it could elevate, right? Some of the best performers in the world are coming into this space. Some of the finest arts. We have some of the best ballet dancers in the country globally that grace the stage. So we know that it needs to get good and communicate how quality that performance and that content will be. So we needed to make sure that it does that too. And using these assets, this A really iconically and the gold textures, we knew that we could achieve that. It is kind of custom type in the logo. We're going to get there too. We also needed to know that it could stretch across digital activations, right? It's a 135-year-old space, but we need to, talk to people now in 2025. And then we also needed to make sure that it could play second fiddle. So in the bus ad to the left there, you can see it's all about Avenatti. It's all about this ballet theater, but we can still bring that auditorium branding in there, and it still has legs, even if it's not the most prominent thing on the poster. And then we just kept making stuff. Honestly, this initial presentation, we made so much stuff for, because we just kept getting excited and kept being like, oh, we should do that. Oh, we should do that. Did we make a hat? Like, did we make polos?
I think that's when you know you've really cracked that big idea, is when it's like, they doesn't stop. It just kept coming. It was so cool. It was like, and now we can do sidewalk graphics with our arrows. Like it was so just like coming out of us.
Mhm. And as a National Historic Landmark, you're not allowed to attach anything to the outside of the building, like a marquee or signage or anything like that. But we thought, why not project something onto the side of the building? Or why not find some places downtown that can be host to murals and things like that to direct you once you're in that neighborhood to the theater. And it turned out that they were as jazzed about this as we were. So the last thing we needed to do before we took it all the way to the top was make sure that we finalized that mark. And we really landed that brand role, and we needed to land the logo just as solidly. So when we built our presentation for this logo, it's not uncommon to have a favorite logo going in. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've had a favorite logo for every presentation I've ever done. But it is pretty uncommon to come in and lean on one as heavily as we did.
Yeah.
But we knew that it was a good, solid strategic choice for them. So we put many eggs into that basket. Not all of them, but
Yeah.
most of them. So what we landed on was this arched logo mark. If you remember the badge that you saw earlier, the AC monogram, that stood for, there it is, that one. It stands for Auditorium Chicago, or Chicago's Auditorium. It's beautiful, and it's still in the theater on the remaining original seats that are way up in the nosebleed seats. And we really liked that the filigree and the clout that sort of thing brought. So we grabbed that A, modernized it, and then built this logo mark off of that. We found a piece of typography. The typeface, the type family is called Arpona. That related very similarly. So we started with that and crafted it a little bit to our will to account for this logo arch. And we also knew that it worked really well with that A too. So what we brought together was a sort of dual sun solar system. We have this arch logo that does a lot for us, as you'll see in the coming slides. It acts as a stage, as a reflection of the like vastness and sonority of the space, and a stage for all the things that can be there, as you see here. It holds a lot of things, everything from their tagline to QR codes, to some of their more philanthropic efforts, like the Hearts to Art that you can see there. It serves as a platform, just like their stage, for all the acts inside of it.
I personally just love that we made a mark that could hold their mission, theater for the people, but it could also do things like put a QR code in it, which I think as designers, we're always like, oh, when we have to stick that silly QR code on things, but it was kind of designed to be able to equip that, and that was really fun.
Mm-hmm. And then when you repeat it, we had this huge aha moment that as soon as you did that, we were like, oh my God, it feels like we're in the theater. When you sit in those seats and look above to see these massive repeating arches that are a key to its acoustic, it feels exactly like this. And then it's also really flexible. It can sit on its own on a poster and really communicate that brand. It can also live behind a lot of photography, which you're going to see a lot more of. And then the A on its own, once you know the brand, can also, once you're inside, once you're familiar with it, can stand alone as an iconic mark for it too. So remember those posters I told you, remember? We got a little bit of feedback from the client on our arch logo before we recrafted it to be this like more perfect geometry, which was to say that they don't want it to feel like a halo. The theater is old, and there are a lot of performers that are performed there that are not alive anymore, and they were afraid that it was going to feel too much like a halo, or like sort of the stained glass orb behind people. So we wanted to be cognizant of that and show them that there was more ways to bring that arch in beyond just that. So you still have Freddie Mercury interacting with that logo, but then you can do things like Anthony Bourdain, where it repeats behind as a pattern element. And then it can do really impactful things like reimagine how their programs could be, or be projections on the curtain. And the programs specifically, their current programs really undersell their brand. If you want to go to the next one, Parker. The Auditorium Theater currently, there's a
logo at the top.
There's a logo at the top
You
of that.
can see it.
Yeah. Doesn't look like it, but there is. So at this point, picking up that program that they had before, you would not know where you are. But we've taken that and turned it into a collectible, right? It's from an afterthought to playbill status, something that you can collect a bunch of and know exactly where you're at. And then we wanted to make sure it's still elevated too. This really, really high-class business card, the poster series with all of the different composers. We wanted to make sure that it also felt elevated, and we proved that it did. And then it still needs to modernize too. This really hot color palette on these arches on this black feel really impactful and really ownable in a really cool way. And like I said, we just kept making stuff. So we were like, you can't put anything on the building, but what if you put something across the street or on the sidewalk? Like, do you make an arch? Like the Robert and Deanna love symbol in Philadelphia, or the Hollywood sign, something you could pose with to let people know where you are and what you're doing. But like I said, we couldn't put every egg into our basket, so we put all but two of them.
Yeah, we presented, Zach and I presented all that, and they were like, but we do have two more options, but like, they're not as good.
Yeah, we're like, they're fine, they're just not as cool. So we did present the other two, both as straight word marks, one of them with an arch optically in the other direction, and another one with, just a straight up word mark, which we told them would be very safe. But we really lucked out because at the end of the day, they were like, yeah, no, you're totally right. The arch is the way to go. And we did that because we made it the obvious choice. We were like, this is clearly the way you need to go. It's ownable. It communicates everything we need to communicate. It elevates. It was the right choice.
They really saw the theater in it, which was really the way to like winning them over on it.
Mm-hmm. But that left one more big hurdle, and it's the scariest hurdle for any creative that's ever presented to them.
Bum, bum, bum. The board of directors, often considered and can be the villain in this story. It's often where the whole thing either blows up or it unravels or something's not right. The board of directors is a very, very difficult audience to win over. They come from a lot of different perspectives. They are sometimes very stuck in their ways and stuck in their points of view on what should happen to the theater. And oftentimes, to complicate it, they're very heavily invested in the theater as well. So their voices very much matter. But they're also brilliant people who truly understand what the theater is and who they're talking to and how they can move forward. So needless to say, we were nervous. But the way that we approached this gauntlet was three things. We did three things that we think made a big difference in getting through this moment. So one, we were true to the theater in every single thing that we did. So everything we had learned, immersed in, we told a clear, compelling story so that every design choice that we made and showed tied back to the theater itself, the architecture, the star-studded history, the current diversity of programming, everything. If it's an arch, it's because there's an arch right there. Yeah. And it really demonstrated to the board of directors that we loved the theater and that we understood it. Two, we put on our diva, which is very unnatural for me. I am not a natural diva. You can ask the guys. And we said, we are not going to present in the usual board setting. We want the board of directors out of their board of director meeting mode, and we want them in the theater in audience mode, because board of directors are people too, and they can be audience members and they love the theater. So let's get them in the theater. And then lastly, we made it real. We had two ushers that passed out program mock-ups during the presentation. Every member had a tote bag over their seat. And we almost presented from the stage. Parker, you can go to the next one. We laugh at ourselves a little bit because we were like, we must do this on the stage. Well, they set us right in front of the stage with this screen that wasn't maybe as big as we could imagine.
Right here in this video, and it was kind of
But nonetheless, we presented in the theater, which is what the work deserved. And they could see the tote bags up in their meeting space from 100 feet away because of that bold branding. They could hold the programs in their hands. And because we were telling a true story of how we had brought what was true to the theater forward through our design ideas and through this brand identity system, that's really what won them over. And so we actually had a really great board of directors meeting.
Yeah, this was again back to the Val being like, you are the brand and design expert here. Don't forget it.
One of our favorite quotes was from the president of Roosevelt University, who I've seen a lot of these, and that was by far the best one I've ever seen as far as a design presentation went. And then my absolute favorite was from a gentleman who was the great-great-grandson of Louis Sullivan, the architect. And he said that my great-great-grandfather would have loved this. And he had tears in his eyes. And that was just a really, really special moment for us in this project.
So we had done it. We had conquered the final boss. No, we had gotten to Act 3, which was showtime. We had alignment and approval, and so we were going to make this thing real. So we first started to codify and make a brand guide, like any good designers do.
And with Design B&B, we have a specific approach to making our brand guidelines. I know that as designers, I'm sure you've seen several of them by now. You might hate making them. I know a lot of us do, but we want our brand guidelines to not only be an expression of how the brand works and what the rules are, but it should show you how it works too. So beyond just being a set of rules, it should also be an expression of the brand for people to come back and look at. So it's a do as I say and as I do type of situation. So as we click through some of the pages here, you can see that not only are we telling them how to do things, but we're showing them how to do things too. We even brought in our tribe and our enemy. We showed them that, hey, we have some primary assets. Here's the big three, and here's how to use them. We even broke out then the arches and how each of those comes to life and when to use them. So there is the classic, then there's the tagline version, Chicago's landmark stage, which you're going to see in most places, and then in more intimate settings or in more earnest executions, the theater for the people is the one that really comes through. And then even going from there, we love our free space. We had a slide in here showing them the working space within that arch to make sure that they didn't put anything in it that got too close or anything in it that was too lame. Frankly, we really said it's a special place. So put things in there that matter. And then we, as you can see there with the dancer from the Deeply Rooted Dance Studio, we started to show them how to use it too. And not just the arch, we told them where the A came from, as I said, from those seats, and started to show it in action as well, going from this straight into the page, just like the arch page, that shows them where to use it, how to use it, and how it can really iconically work into photography. Even in little pages like this showing the arrows, we could have just had an arrow over there and said, this is an arrow. You can put it in stuff. We've described it in the way that you would use it. And even things like color, like I said, we'd like to name our colors after how to use them, but we also wanted to consistently root it in where it came from. So you can see where that honey gold was born from, where the gilded gold came from, and that warm, rich spotlight is all over the place. So we try to keep them rooted in where they came from too, so they know how to use it. But even beyond that, more importantly, this is the theater for the people, so it should be the theater for all people. And we wanted to make sure that all of their colors ticked all of the WCAG boxes and then some, not just hitting the baselines that we needed to do to make sure things pass, but make sure that they really, really are legible and able to be perceived and seen and enjoyed by everybody. So we gave them a set and a really clear guideline on which colors they can use in digital spaces and which ones they should reserve just for print. As far as photography, here's the photography answer. We pulled a lot of it for the initial rounds from Shutterstock, from online, to show them the sort of things that they could do based on the acts that we knew were there. But when it came to actually executing, one of the reasons this project came out so beautifully is because the photography is good.
Yeah.
Like it is high key, real good. So we started putting it on everything. We have, like I said, a robust library of dance companies. So we've set up a whole set of posters that they can hang up to spark joy and ignite passion in all the dance companies that come there. They can either see themselves or see the other people that have been there and get really excited about it. And then like right at the finish line, my man Paul Natkin, he just like came out of nowhere over Christmas and was like, hey, one of us noticed that when we were going through the Getty image libraries, that there was this one guy named Paul Natkin that showed up on a
Yeah.
lot of these photos of people performing at the auditorium.
Yeah.
And we were like, hey, do you know this guy? And they were like, oh, yeah, we know Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about it being around for so long and being a historic landmark is you can go to Getty Images and look up the Auditorium Theater and you can actually find photography of people performing there. And so we just mentioned the photographer's name to the client and they were like, yeah, we have a relationship with him. And so then we got access to like the gold mine.
Yeah, we were like, can you hook us up? And so we got an email over Christmas break from Paul, who is apparently a very nice guy, and it just said, hey, I had some free time, so I pulled some stuff together for you. Here's a library for you. And it was Prince and Chaka Khan
on the stage, like on the auditorium stage, and we were like screaming.
That's Pat Calloway in the dressing rooms when they still had wood paneling. You got Stevie Wonder, Jerry Garcia, everybody performed on this stage, and we now have photos of all. So obviously we put them everywhere. We have some beautiful posters that we've made for them. They call them three cheaters that will go out front of the theater and in poster holders backstage. We did a lot of things showing them when people were there. So the Al Green poster you can see there, it tells them who it is and when he was there to really root people who are there in who has been there and who has walked in their shoes before. And like I said, we put it everywhere. So not just past performers, but current and contemporary. And as we said, it's the theater for the people. So there are some audience shots peppered in here too, right? It's all about them. We did a whole social campaign about it that we'll talk about, but we really wanted to elevate not just the performers, but the people that come, that we do all this stuff for.
Yeah, I think this little sequence here is so cool because it really honors so many of the things that we set out to do and that we got feedback on along the way too. Like the art is honoring the architecture, the photography is showing you the history of world-class entertainment and celebrity. You're also seeing the breadth and the diversity of programming through this sequence of images. So just in like one that kind of gift. Really just proud to kind of see this all come together. And then just some continued, executions, like celebrating those folks. Again, Zach said, adding the dates of when they actually performed really lent some legitimacy too, and then leads you to get in here. Now you're just curious about, who's next at the auditorium. Another similar graphic to this was this kind of graphic of names, almost like a festival lineup graphic. Felt very contemporary and modern for today, but could really allow us to talk about the history and all of those performers. And just house tons and tons of imagery. So now their programs, when you go to see a presented show at the auditorium, they look like this. These are real programs, and you could see their whole season and kind of create this really collectible, takeaway, because sometimes that's the only piece that goes home with the audience members. And then we had one particular big show that was coming up for the auditorium. So we had really locked in on this, at the start of summer, and that's when we learned that the theater would be hosting Stephen Colbert and The Late Show for 4 nights while he was in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. And that was a moment where a big deadline drove some really needed and welcomed pressure. So we really went to the theater and said, okay, like what can we do to really make an impact and cover the block in this new identity? So we helped them roll out these posters, and we helped to oversee the installation and really see this come to life. And this was just so cool after working on it for so many months to really start to see how it was impacting the block and the neighborhood. And I think we made some things happen in that pressure to this deadline that probably wouldn't have necessarily happened if we hadn't kind of made that deadline for ourselves in a way.
Absolutely.
And then it was just really cool to go to the Colbert Show and to really experience this. CBS had taken, oddly, we had an idea early on about projecting onto the building. CBS had the same idea. And so we were able to get in on that. And when you design a logo on your MacBook and then you see it on a building like this, that again, back to what I said at the beginning, just this project just took scale to a whole new level. And it was, I think, really enriching for our team to get to go and experience this week.
And the theater treated us right this week. Like they really treated us like VIPs. It was very fun to watch the whole city lining up for tickets all night. And we got to slip in the back door with the theater friends, like ushering us past. And so their appreciation and their embracing and their pride in the launch of this all throughout the lobby and in all of the spaces was really something to see.
And then the last slide, the last thing that we want to share is just a little motion piece that kind of brings all of it together. Right. So that is the work and the process of our brand identity for the auditorium. I think we've got a little time, 15 minutes or so. I know the chat's been going off, but we'd love to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you so much, guys. That was a beautiful presentation. I'm looking through the chat here. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or to just type them directly in the chat.
Can I, sorry, is this a good time?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. How do you guys divide the workload to this project?
Sure, I can take it. I mean, I think for this project, like, it was very cool that at the beginning, we took our whole team. We took every single person with us. So I think through the journey, the team was able to kind of expand and contract when we needed it to. When we needed more minds on the work, we brought more minds into it. When we needed, someone really talented with illustration, we brought in that skill set. So I think that's a bit of our philosophy at Design B&B. We're always playing to superpowers and dividing, I think letting those superpowers divide the work up for us a little bit.
And then naturally, as the work progresses and an idea takes hold and Bee's Place really started to take hold and the arched logo became the one that was the lead logo, like the people that were working and developing those pieces kind of continued on in the project. So Zach has really been on it right from the start because he was so involved with Bee's Place and that arch logo and things like that. So sometimes the designers that are involved, it sort of follows the natural progression of the project. I'm going to read a question. Harsha is asking, has this project influenced any of your subsequent work, either in how you conceive of a project's ethos or how you communicate story to a client? Yes, 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 yes. This project has done exactly what we hoped and dreamed it would do, which was inspire us as a studio. So it's elevated our work. It's even like elevated how we put together a brand book in like the design details. It's elevated our motion. Sean and Jason, our amazing motion team here in the studio, have done incredible work in bringing it to life and helping us understand that the logo is about amplification, and like the behaviors and motion graphics of it communicate that. And that has influenced our other work in motion as well. So I would say across the board in our storytelling, how we approach our clients, all of it. And some of it is because we were just able to practice some of that in an environment that was exciting and brave and courageous, because the auditorium was so generous and courageous as well. So across the board, an elevating experience for Design B&B overall.
And I think specifically from the as a technical example, the way when we brought the design principles in this workflow, we've started to bring that in
earlier
and earlier for our other brands, because it worked so well in helping us both sell in the brand world and understand what we were doing.
Yeah, I think sometimes you want to put them at the end, like, oh, we'll write the principle at the end, but kind of sliding them in the middle, and it's okay that they're not, that it's still wet cement a little bit, was learning for us in this process.
How long does it take for graphic designers to develop a brand, and does time often cause stress? This day and age, like there's no such thing as like we say this was over a year and a half, but we probably did this in a couple months, where we really had the idea and had the logo locked, had done our homework. That all happened within a couple of months. Things happen pretty quickly, especially the arena that Design B&B works in. We probably have more time on the auditorium than we would normally have in our other projects. We work for a lot of big clients and things move quickly. So does time cause stress? Yes. The auditorium was a decision we made, and we carved that time out. And it was hard at times because we didn't stop having other clients at all. But it was a choice and a decision, and we just had to be disciplined in making sure that time was carved out. We also did a lot of it in mini sprints in the studio too. Like Parker's really good at figuring out like, okay, this team needs to focus for a couple of hours at a time for 2 days straight, or we need to get into a room for 1 day with these 5 people and we'll knock it out. He's really good at getting it done collectively and efficiently, rather than having one poor person siloed at their desk for hours and hours, kind of spinning on their own. So
unless I wanted to.
So the team aspect of how we work at Design B&B also helps this type of work move at a good clip.
Yeah.
Because that was another question. What else was the studio working on? Everything else we always work on.
Yeah.
Because the blessing of the work that we have and our clients, and like we work on brands like Eggo and Pop-Tart and Mr. Coffee and like really big brands, but that gives us the resources to be able to do something like the auditorium and give back to the city and give back to people who are giving art to others. So in some ways, even though it's more stress, it's actually more of a motivator, because we really appreciate then our really good paying client partnerships that we have, that we depend on, because it gives us the resources to do the things like this.
I can take the question here. There's one just around, Miriam asks, as I near graduation, I'm eager to enter the design field. Can you share what specific qualities and portfolio elements you look for in new graduates applying to Design B&B? I think for me, it's really like, can you build an idea? Design school, I think we all learn how to execute. And the portfolios that stand out, I think for us as we're looking for new talent and interns, is that idea that kind of sticks with you. And can you get excited behind that? Does the idea drive design decisions? Does it, I like with auditorium, does the idea keep feeding you more executions of that? Can you riff on it? That's definitely, I think, something that stands out as we're looking for new talent and looking at portfolios.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to answer Annabella's question. What do you guys look for in feedback? And going off of that, how do you edit your concept based on that feedback? I have a lot of experience in creative direction, and the thing that makes me the most proud is when my team listens to the feedback and like really listens to it. So nobody's on offense, nobody's on defense. The client might not have, they might say a lot of things that are executional or things that make you bristle or like, ugh. They were very not sure about that spotlight yellow for a long time. And we stuck with it because we kept explaining like why it was right for them and for what they wanted to accomplish. But never am I okay with my team like forcing something down a client's throat, being super defensive, not listening or shutting down or bringing ego to the table that doesn't let you actually hear what the client is saying. And again, going back to what I was saying about the board of directors, they love this work because we listen to them.
Yeah.
And we heard them about the world-class performers. We heard them about the complexities of recruiting clients, or sorry, recruiting talent and how that history of celebs was so important. We heard them that it needed to be easy and digital and like all those things. So for me, the success of the feedback is that first, the auditorium was amazing and super smart. And second, my team was just willing to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that back to, it was easy to incorporate their feedback because we really did leave, every time we interact with them, we left smarter. They told us something that it was so insightful that it actually, like we had to take it on because now we discovered this new angle or we were looking at it from a different perspective. So incorporating the feedback in this work at least was quite easy in that way because it just naturally made the work stronger.
Yeah, and as Val said, it was a great brief. Honestly, most of the reason that the work is so good is because that North Star was so strong for so long. We know the problem we needed to solve, and every piece of feedback is just an additional layer to that problem. So knowing where we're going every time is really helpful in solving it. It's just we might be like, that's kind of annoying, but it's still a problem that we need to solve and still make it look good. And because we gave them some of the language that they needed to use with our creative principles early on, they were able to give us feedback that was also clearer and more insightful and things like that. So it was very much a partnership the whole way.
Yeah. For us, part of our core belief of making design accessible isn't just to people who find it inaccessible or don't have the opportunities that they might want. It's also making it accessible to our clients, who are not using like really language that isn't clear or being so design centric that we're not really communicating with our clients or equipping them the way that Zach was talking about. So making design accessible can take a lot of forms, and making it easy for clients to work with you and understand design is part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the notion of like remembering we're the expert in design also comes with and you have the ability to educate on design too and inform, and that was really cool. Christian has a question here about what was the frequency of reviews and meetings with the client? And because it was pro bono, was there any limitations on what the final outputs would be or what work would be done? Yeah, I think the frequency was, I don't know, a couple times a month there while we were really in the thick of it. I think our initial trip to the theater was, I think, in December, and the Colbert show was in August. So if that kind of gives you, like, we were meeting pretty steadily during that like 8-month period.
And some of that was us driving more, like, can we please have some meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that partnership was us knowing that they've never done this before.
Yeah.
A lot of them didn't know what was involved in like getting the things printed or who do we talk to get those window things put up. Like, what is that time like? How long does it take to get these things done? So towards the end, we were also partnering with them slightly with some urgency to be like, well, great. Colbert's your deadline. You want to hit Colbert, you need to send them to print by this date. We need to do this by then. So it was very much a hands-on process towards that deadline.
Well, and then I'll just take the second part of that question. I think one of the huge benefits of being an independent agency, and not held by a holding company or working with a big conglomerate kind of agency, which I've spent many, many fantastic years doing. But at this point, in my career and what this team is doing, we're independent. So we really can do what we want to do as long as we're healthy. And so that's a really good motivator to stay healthy from a paying client perspective. And then from a pro bono aspect, it's really what we decide to do.
Christina's got a question here. The process can feel at times overwhelming and unknown. What are some of your biggest tips and tricks to designing with a team?
I was typing one out, but I'll just say it out loud. My best piece of advice is take an improv class. Because an improv class teaches you how to think on your feet. It teaches you how to pivot quickly if a direction or a scene or something changes, but most importantly, it teaches you yes and, which is to say that if an idea crosses the table that you don't like, you don't just shut it down, you figure out how to make it work. Or you figure out how to build on it and make it better. It really is an incredibly similar skill set.
And my biggest advice designing with a team is to get off of your computer in a way. If you remember, like our initial ideas and brainstorms, we were at the auditorium, we didn't have our computers with us, and we were working on pieces of paper. And I think today, like, you know, like right now, Zach and Val and I are in the same room, but we're all sitting looking at our own screens to obviously to present. But that can be a barrier where you just start to communicate through the screen to each other, even when you're in the same room. And so sometimes it just takes like go back to analog and you can really get the best from each other as a team. What are some of the questions you like to ask clients to get them to talk about their goals and desired outcomes? That's a really good question.
Well, we had in our informational interviews, we had about 20 questions that we curated very specifically to get to that. And one of the reasons we love an informational interview is because we like to get them on their own. Because when they're talking in a group, it's often a bit of groupthink, or the more junior players might not say what they're really thinking because the senior players are in the room. And there was a lot of stuff that needed to be said out loud, which was our brand identity sucks. We don't have anything. Nobody knows what we look like. We know what we're about, but we don't know how to say it. We don't, I mean, it was like a nightmare. Alongside, you had a lot more like maybe other generations, like the older generation saying, but it's an architectural icon and it's this and it's that. And so getting them on their own a little bit, or just feeling free or liberated to talk about what really the tensions are, we find to be really helpful. And then at the end, when we're looking at work and we're trying to get them to talk about it or react to it, sometimes we like to ask the question, like if we went with this brand world, if we went with B's world and it was all about community and it was all about being a destination, what would you do different tomorrow in your job when you came to work?
Yeah.
And then you start getting them to think about brand, and brand is more than a logo. It's about behavior. It's a platform for action. It's all these things. So get them to think about their own personal role in the organization and like, how is it different tomorrow if this is a design that we love it?
Yeah, and like to build on that, I think each person and each person's, depending on the role that they play for the theater, their answer to that is different. The person who works in the box office, like that, their response to that question is different than the person who's attracting new performances and new acts. So that is a way to cater it personally.
We watched the finance guy like live time changing where they were going to put their money in a meeting of like, we don't have to put the money there. What if we shifted it to here and we made this?
Yeah.
And so it was really powerful when you think about brand through the lens of behavior.
I know we're almost at time, but I just have one last question. Is there any upcoming projects or anything else that Design B&B is working on at the moment that we can expect soon that, you know, anything you want to tease?
Okay, well, I'll tease one. I'll tease a super commercial one that we're really proud of because it's a big, iconic American brand. The Eggo refresh is out, has just launched. You might see it on shelves now in freezer doors, but Eggo is a super cool brand. And we had actually done the design work for the current packaging and the current brand We have a long relationship with them. And it was a really hard project because people love Ego. Ego is doing really well, just starting to figure out that it was going to have to fight against private label a little harder. And so to make something that's really cool and that well loved, just that much better is really hard to do. So we're proud of that. Love it and like it if you see it. Buy it out of the freezer. But it's just the full Ego line, totally redone. And then we have another one.
Yeah, and the other one, each year at Design B&B, we partner with a nonprofit organization in Chicago through what we call the Good Egg Grant. And that's a pro bono partnership. We work with them for an entire year. And this year we're partnered with the Center on Halsted. They're an LGBTQIA plus organization located on the north side. And that work is really important right now. So we're really proud to be partnering with them.
Well, I know we're at time, but I just want to say thank you all so much for the lovely presentation. I learned a lot and I'm always inspired by all that you do. So thank you for being friends of the club, and we hope that we could meet up in person soon and do something in live action. So
Fantastic. Well, we're moving soon, so we will host another event, Christian. Stay tuned.
okay. Yes.
Thank you for having us.
And
Thank you. Thanks so much.
and thank you all for joining so much. And definitely, I saw Parker, you just shared the Design B&B Instagram in the chat there. So definitely give them a follow because they're always up to really awesome stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Have a good one.
Thank you.